okay now. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for rejoining us. And at the end of this panel, we will have asked everybody that was in the first panel that is still with us to come up or sit on the sides, and we'll be asking questions to the audience. Hopefully, you have some questions. If you want to pass the class, you'll have some questions. So that that would be the time for you to ask them. But at this time, I would like to introduce the next panel, ask the next panel members to introduce themselves. And this is Lubitsa from Azola.
Hi, everybody. So I'm a co-founder and CEO of Azola. And this panel is going to be very different than the previous panel. What we are doing is we are actually taking CO2 and we turning it into a biodegradable natural fiber and trying to actually replace polyester. And how I got here is I had a dream to be a fashion designer. And yes, I did take my mom's bedspread when I was a kid and I made it into a whole wardrobe. It was very interesting. I wish I kept it. It was very interesting. Anyway, so I spent many years in apparel, in fashion, in textiles. I traveled around the world. I've been to over 40 countries producing garments and textiles, and I've seen firsthand how devastating the industry is to the environment. And a few years ago, I was working for a company that was looking for sustainable, different materials, and the fact is that it just isn't anything out there on the market right now. The best thing you can probably find is recycled polyester, but it's still polyester. And it's pretty toxic to make it, and when you wash it, it still actually leaks the microplastics that we have in our brains, in our babies, in our bodies. So I actually, being from fashion background, I partnered with very, very smart gentleman who also happens to be my husband, who came up with this idea. So we are genetically engineered bacterium that actually sucks CO2 and turns it into a natural biodegradable goo that can be spun into fiber.
Okay, thank you. Kelsey, Unspun.
Hi everyone, thank you guys for coming tonight. I'm honored to be on this panel, honored to be here representing Unspun. I actually just had my 3-year mark with the company that I work at now. I do product development and production at Unspun. My background's in fashion design from Cincinnati, Ohio. Originally, my heart was always set on living like the fast-paced, cool kid designer life in New York City. And then I did do that for quite a while. Worked at a bunch of different brands on production teams, on product development teams, worked for Mara Hoffman, worked for Miele Vuitton, like these, smaller but more luxury designers. Learned a lot while doing it, had so much fun. And then I was like, I want to see what else is out there. I always dreamed of living on the West Coast. And I applied for this one-off job in San Francisco. I had never even been to California. And then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna move all the way across country by myself and work at this crazy fashion tech startup. So here I am 3 years later. We're gonna get there. No spoiler, we're gonna get there.
I'm trying to give the softball up there. Hi everyone, my name is Greg Moore. I am not from the fashion industry. I'm actually from the sports industry, but I've been in fashion for about a decade now. So I guess I come from more the operations side of fashion, right? So I run 2 companies. One's called Fit3D, another one's called Wear, W-A-I-R. Fit3D is the world's largest 3D body scanning company. Right? So we deployed about 4,500 scanners now in 80 plus countries. We scan about 4 million human bodies. We scan almost 1 million human bodies a year. We work with companies like Nike, Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, Superga, you name it, to help them understand their sizing strategies as associated with how do I build garments that best fit the consumers that I want to sell to. And then in 2020-ish, we launched a company called Wear. We built a prediction model on top of that. We found a way to predict human bodies both by camera vision and then also through widths. We deploy that onto apparel e-commerce websites, and if you go there and you click the little "What's my size" button, you may answer a few questions. We will predict all of your body dimensions. We'll recommend the best fitting size. We steal all that data, we give it back to the brands. They can do the same thing we did with Nike. so they can basically create more efficient decisions in operations, technical design, marketing, and losing the last word here. So there's an N. Merchandising. Thank you. Got it. So anyway, that's our thing. We've been at it for a long time, about 12 years now. Built super fun and making a dent. So that's cool. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so this panel has a different focus, if you will, from the first panel. But one of the things I wanted to add into this was sharing with you this concept of fiber that's synthetic. And this, well, I'll hold it up for a second. So this is something I sewed together when you're talking about sewing and what you made. This is something that I sewed together when I was, I think, 12 or 14. And the concept was, my mother was from, she lived through the Depression, and so you wasted nothing. And some of this fiber, if anybody ever remembers the name Kiana, Kiana was a type of nylon that came out to feel like silk. And so some of this is a Kiana fiber that she thought was just so fabulous. And so she was having us make things out of Kiana. And it was the idea that, thank you so much, Holly. The idea was at one point in time, we didn't know enough about the fibers, and fibers are developed. Why was polyester developed? Because it was easy to carry. So that was the development of it. Now, moving on from there, could you tell us, Lupisa, how does Azola encourage and take action with individuals and companies to remove, reduce, or technologically transform CO2?
Well, the way we're working actually with individuals, when we came up with this idea, of course, we needed to, we started talking to friends and family and people that we know, and we needed money, and so people were saying, how can we support you, right? And so, because I think that fashion is something that we all love, right? I mean, look at you guys, you all look really good, very fashionable. And so you probably want to contribute to making things better, and of course it takes a lot of time and money to make new material. So we actually have launched a WeFunder campaign. So if you are interested, if anybody is interested, as a bunch of our friends and family, that's how we are going about it, because we wanted to give opportunity to as many people instead of just going to some DC round. The way we, and our ultimate vision is actually to give companies that are making clothes right now. I work for Levi's, so let's say Levi's, they know how to make jeans, right? They've been doing it for many, many years. So we want to give them a better way of doing it, because we don't want to be doing it ourselves. We want to give them fiber that they can use, that they can be proud of, and think about it. If you were walking down the street and said, hey, my jeans actually remove 10 pounds of CO2, wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes, yes, yes.
I can see the runway, right? And there is the dress that this model is wearing, and it removed 20 pounds of CO2.
And hopefully at that point in time, we want to have tags that people will be cutting out that will be printed on the garment so that it will tell us.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you. Kelsey, I read that Unspun's mission is to revolutionize the fashion industry with custom fit, sustainable clothing by using Vega, a 3D weaving technology that eliminates many steps of traditional garment manufacturing. Can you explain what the Vega supply chain is and is not?
Definitely. So I'm going to start with facts because I'm a factual person. So the two biggest problems within the fashion industry currently are overproduction and transportation logistics. So when I heard these facts I'm about to share, I was like, oh my God, is this really true? Is this really the industry I work in? And I was like, wait, yes, I can't keep denying. So according to an article from Fashion Revolution, the number of garments produced annually has nearly doubled since 2000. and exceeded 100 billion for the first time in 2014. And an estimated 92 million tons of textile waste is created annually from the fashion industry. Like, wow, you would think we can do better, and we can do better. But this is the shocking fact. So every second, the equivalent of one garbage truck of textiles is landfilled or burned globally. These problems are why we, Unspun, have invented 3D weaving for the apparel industry. The fact that the industry is so wasteful has pretty much allowed us to rethink supply and demand. So Vega 3D weaving technology that we have developed allows us to take thousands of yarn and get seamless products out. It's going to be the fastest yarn to garment production yet to date. Think of all of these yarns, thousands of yarns, warp ends hanging in a circular port, and then weft yarn is inserted in a circular fashion continuously, and that is how the weaving process works. So our weaving technology is quite simplified compared to any traditional lengthy supply chain. We sell this as yarn to you when we're pitching ourselves to potential brand partners. Our Vega weaving machines cut out many extra fabric preparation steps that are just eliminated with the way we weave, which we weave a digital coded file that creates a tube of textile, a single pant leg, and it can be woven in 12 minutes or less. So yeah, it's a pretty fun weaving little machine to watch. And then our supply chain also cuts out logistic nightmares, shifting the script of just the global importing of goods. So typical fast fashion companies produce at such a large scale that they have to build in suppliers and agents, store hundreds of thousands of units at warehouses. We're working to create microfactories around the globe that produce our 3D woven goods at a more manageable scale, producing only what's needed versus overproducing. The idea with having our global microfactory hub is to produce closer to the consumer, thus allowing us to nearshore our manufacturing.
Are there any of this being done in the local Bay Area?
So we have our micro factory in Emeryville, and we have 3 working production machines currently that we prototype on, that we test on, that we are trying to amp up to get to working factory conditions so we can then deploy to EU and other countries.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
What do you think it takes, from a business perspective, to actually get towards a deployment that makes a dent in the vision that you're creating?
You might need to
Did you
repeat
say
your
that?
question.
All right, so I said, from a business perspective, what's required, what type of deployment is required to actually make a dent in the way that we normally produce clothes, right? Because right now it's like we buy yards and yards and trillions of yards of fabric. It gets cut by Gerber and Lectra. Those are amortized over time with big, costly, expensive machines. So you guys are coming in and seeding that. What actually has to happen for that to happen at a point at a scale where it actually makes a difference?
Totally. So, like us, there's many companies out here with all these crazy revolutions, like cool ideas, algae yarn, 3D weaving. You think oh my God, why is this not at scale? We need more people to invest in companies like us so we can continue to grow. Unspun, we just raised our Series B, so we have done a pretty massive amount of hiring for a startup that was, very small, that literally started with 5 people. We're now a team of 70, which is really wonderful. So we just need to keep running tests on our machine. We've hired lots of more textile engineers, automation, hardware mechanics. So all of these people doing these very technical roles will allow us to perfect the craft of our 3D weaving, perfect what we're doing now in Emeryville in our microfactory hub. So then the goal will be, we can pretty much have a cut and sew method of having perfect machines that can weave quickly and produce more efficiently with much less waste at a much larger scale. And then of course having strategic brand partners instead of just working with small designers, having big name brands that we would produce for that could flip the paradigm of how they're creating product.
That makes sense. So one of the things I've followed up with, I know their founders quite well. So I've always asked the question of what does it take to unseat the regular cutters, right? The Lectra, Gerber, the folks that are out there. and to get these big brands to transition over to this continuous feeding technology, which is really pretty cool.
Could you explain what you're saying, Electra or the Gerber?
Yeah, so so talk a little bit about it, right? But like Electra and Gerber are two big cutting, right, along with other tools over here. But so let's say that I'm like Gap, right? I have my factories all over the world. Those factories bring in just like again, trillions of yards of yarn and whatever. They go over these machines, they get cut based on these patterns, the waste gets thrown away, right? And so that waste is just trash right now generally, sometimes recycled, sometimes upcycled, but mostly it's trash, right? They're preventing that waste, which is really cool because that waste, I think, is probably one of the biggest challenges to sustainability in fashion. And so the challenge, however, is those brands that invest in these multi-million-dollar machines, they expect them to last for 30 years, right? So at what point in the buying cycle do you guys get to come in and try to unseat that relationship? And that's always one of the things, right? Which is, I think, why you're doing the microfactory, which is really cool. But yeah, so anyway, sorry to interrupt everything. I think that's a really
great.
fun type of way to think about like the fashion and the creation side of things.
It reminds me of socks, because when you get the tube socks, that the difference between the tube socks and the socks that had the ankle in them, but then they didn't fit as well for some people, or some people didn't like them as well. But fit would be fascinating. Okay, Greg.
Yes.
With
I think I've
Ware's,
talked too much already, sorry.
sorry,
I think I've talked too much already.
but you need to talk to us more about
okay.
Ware. So, with Ware's focus on inventing sizeless e-commerce. So is that the correct term? Sizeless e-commerce?
Yeah, sizeless commerce.
How does Ware facilitate the use of AI to develop product and size recommendation solutions, not problems?
Yeah, too much AI. But I love NVIDIA, I invest in NVIDIA, so we can keep going. But no, so I think that there's AI sort of strewn throughout our entire process, right? So if you kind of thought about my beginning story, right, we founded a company called 3D, a bunch of 3D body scans. Our initial concept, to be honest with you, back in 2012, was that we'd place these scanners everywhere and everybody would have a body scan and then everybody would be able to use that scan to buy anything they wanted to fit their body. Well, 4,000 scanners later, 4 million people in a world of 8 billion people is not quite the magnitude that we needed, right? So we had to come up with different ways to do it. And so we built an AI engine in the first place to understand how can I get people to give me their body data without having to take a scan, right? So that's where we ask questions. So the quiz that we ask you when you click the little button, what's my size? We predict your body data, right? Now we're doing, I think it's like 5 million predictions a month. Right, so think about that, right? We're doing 1 million scan a year, and the prediction side we're doing 5 million a month. So the scales are still different, right, in that AI.
Is it down to the point where if let's just say I'm buying a shirt from Gap, and I'm buying it online, and I'm putting, the customer, and putting in my information, and it's telling me I should buy a size 6 or 12 or 3T or whatever.
That's right.
Okay.
So we do, there's a lot of companies that do that, right? TrueFit does that, Fit Analytics does that. Where we're different is that we actually take a step further. So we'll predict 11 body dimensions. We'll predict your neck circumference, bust, under bust, waist, hips, thighs, inseam, cross back, shoulder width, steel left, torso width,
You hear that?
yeah, you get that. I go quick because it doesn't really matter. We predict your bodies, okay? But we do that because, again, we ask these same questions of those 4 million people that then answer those questions. So we know their ethnicities, their geographic locations, their disposable income, all this excess information, which then allows us to do these predictions that are really good at highly accuracy. Almost as accurate as an actual body scan, which is kind of cool. And so that's the first part of it, right? That's the first piece of AI. The second piece of it is understanding the relationship between this garment and my body as the shopper, right? And so in that sense, and this is where we're differentiated, a lot of our competitors, they would look at like your grade rulings, or your tech packs, or your specs, or your size tables, whatever else. We found that the relationship between what you say your sizing is and how it fits that human body is about 0. Like it actually doesn't. And there's a couple of reasons, right? So if I go to a sizing table, I may look and I may fit a size large in my chest, maybe a large in my waist, maybe an extra large in my hips, right? Which do I choose? I take it off. And I try them on and see what fits it. So So I saw this. What we do is we actually review all the shoppers. We offer fit reviews for all the shoppers that have previously bought your products. We then also predict their bodies, and so now we know, based on geographic location, based on your marketing notes, how you visit the site, based on how you review the site, and then how the products actually fit you, and how other people, based on your body shape and how other people also said that, we can recommend the perfect size for you without having to go through all of this, right? So inherently, it increases conversion because you're happier and you're like, oh, really like this. And then it reduces returns because you don't have the confusion to take away. And so the AI engine is both on the prediction side and then on the recommendation side, and bringing those two pieces together is what so there's AI in. That help?
Yes. So, thank you. Lupisa, could you, when I looked at the site, could you explain, you are not selling a textile product. Is this correct? You're not selling textiles and you're not selling clothing. You're selling a share that I would buy of CO2? When I buy on your site, what is it that I'm buying?
Right now you're not buying anything. I see share, yes, I'm sorry, yes. So you went to a BeFounder site? Yes, okay, I thought you went, sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So right now we are in the early development stage. So if you go to BeFounder and you invest, yes, you will get a piece of Azora. Absolutely. And think about like a few years ago, if you invested in Airbnb $100, it's it would be probably millionaire. But yeah, that's what we do. And by the way, if I may, I actually was in charge of a pretty large fit team and company, and it's incredibly difficult. Fit is incredibly difficult, so what we're doing is great. Yeah.
So eventually you will be developing a textile?
Yes. So what we are doing actually is we are at the very, very, very beginning of the supply chain. So we are actually doing what you would call the level 4, the companies that have absolutely no idea where their fiber is coming from. So that's what we are actually doing. We would be a very, very early stage, and our material is actually going to be made into fiber. Then that will go to somebody else that is going to turn it into
Yarn.
a yarn.
From the yarn into
It's
the
gonna be
fabric.
yes, or we're gonna be right next door to Unspun, and they actually can use we would actually save on transportation. I mean, if you know about supply chain, how fashion works, most fibers are actually synthetic. Now, more than 60% of fibers out there in textiles are synthetic, and so they start with oil.
What does that mean?
They start with oil, with petroleum, right? And the petroleum has to be transported to a refinery that is made into a liquid that is made into a little pellets that are then melted and spun into yarn. So with our technology, we have a little bug that actually sucks CO2 and lives in a bioreactor and makes a material that again is biodegradable, and it can be turned into the same fiber in a couple hours.
So think about the flies with wings.
No, it's a bacterium. We call it a bug.
That's neat. Do you have an idea of when that may be? When?
We are right now working, probably in 6 months we'll be able to do some spinning and make some samples. We are working with North Carolina Textile Institute, and so they can use a tiny little amount. The thing with fashion is that you need a lot of material to make anything, because all the machines are huge. So to make a sample, we probably need 10 pounds of the material. And right now, our bag is producing just a little bit. We are in the lab stage. So. Stay tuned, please.
So I'm very curious. Are there any regulations, like government regulations, to bring a new material into clothing, which will have to hurdle through? Like I have no.
Actual regulation.
It depends on the material. The material that we are making is known material. It's a cellulose, so it's pretty much chemically same material that viscose is made out of, tencel. Except to get to the viscose, you have to cut down trees. There are about 150 million trees cut down every year to make viscose rayon tencel. And 70% of the trees actually wasted. So only 30% of the trees turned into the glue that our material is actually secreting, 100% pure.
Super cool. Awesome.
And do you have a name of what it will be?
No, we don't. We should actually, you know what, on our website, we should be asking people
That's
to
a great
come up with names.
Because I
right?
thought Azula was the name, but the Azula is a plant.
Yes.
So
So the story, yeah, sure. Should I?
yes.
Really quickly.
When I looked you guys up, I couldn't find you. I found your plant.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so the story is, so we had this idea to come up with, to have material made out of CO2. And with my husband and I, and for years, we had lists and lists of names for the company. We just couldn't come up. We are both from Slovakia, so of course, you know, the names that you would give it, you would never be able to pronounce, just like my first name. And so we looked at gods and we looked at whatever you can imagine. And then I came across this little plant that 500 million years ago, there was so much CO2 in the atmosphere that it almost killed all of the life. And this little plant called Azoa sucked enough CO2 to actually save the planet. So I thought, hey, that's the name! So that's how we came up with it.
Great. Thank you.
From now on, we can do that. That was a great.
May I ask Greg a question before you ask me? I'm curious, just with my work with Custom Fit Unspun and seeing all the different body types. And spoiler, we did start with custom made over jeans, and we've used a 3D body scanning software. But I'm curious what is like the most reputable brand that has had the most success from your guys' like fit analytics you provided them post customer feedback.
Post customer feedback. So, with the scans or with the predictions?
Predictions.
Okay, because with the scans, the most reputable is Nike. Like, I redesigned the entire plus size size entirety for Nike based on the scans that we used. Right? So that was probably the biggest one from them. On the prediction side, we've helped Vineyard Vines because they've redesigned their samples. Fresh Think Threads has redesigned twice. Cuts Clothing redesigned once. Who's another big one? Carve Design is going through right now. So we focus on the wear side of the house.
I think just
On the wear side of the house. We focus on the mid-market, right? So we took a couple shots at the enterprise level, and we're like, we're not ready for that. They're like, hey, you need SOC 2 compliance, you need this. We have a small team, we're not going to deal with that. Go find something. We'll come see you in 2 years. So we really focus on mid-market, right? So it's anyone doing kind of, I don't know, call it $1 to $50,000, right, a year. So all the brands that we work with are going to be in that market with tons of them. And then as we get more mature, then we can scale market. But Vineyard Vines is probably one of our biggest customers. And yeah, we've done a lot with them. We're going on 4th year with them, so they've integrated quite a bit into our data.
Thank you.
Which has been really good.
Thank you. Okay, Kelsey then. Can you share more about key technologies and processes like custom fit that differentiate, Unspun, and how these innovations are shaping you in the company?
Totally. So again, just starting with facts, like to share, people that might not know the fashion industry as well. But as we all know, from sitting here this evening, we know conventional clothing is very wasteful, very toxic, if you will. They overproduce, spending tremendous amounts of energy and resources on production, all polluting rivers and land near their facilities. So we are deciding to, since we started in 2015, we have built our zero inventory model with starting with custom body scans to produce 3D body scans from jeans. So zero inventory has been a long dream of the fashion industry, and while we believed our Vega weaving could be the tool to enable it, we knew that we had to show brands that zero inventory is possible, which is why Unspun created the denim brand in 2015. So we still offer jeans that are on demand, 100% custom made to you, made to your body, from a 3D body scan on your phone. We still do that. I manage and run that now currently. But think of that as a case study that proves our custom fit software, and it's to illuminate what is possible within the industry. We do plan to merge the two sides of the business once we can scale our manufacturing, once we can get our machines working at a more robust level, and once brands are able to integrate seamlessly a sizeless system like ours. Currently, Vega are weaving machines. When I say Vega, sometimes people are like, who? But yeah, currently Vega can offer brands more sizes in terms of just harder to fit body types, in terms of, let's say, someone that's like a more curvaceous customer with an apple body, or someone who is a athletic build that's more petite. And then we are also able to keep inventory low. We'll be able to quickly weave up more sizes that might be popular that might run out. But like I said, we do plan to merge these two different sides of the business. We know it's going to be ambitious to combine our custom denim side of the business with the 3D weaving, but with how relentless our team is, I know we can do it.
So I'm hung up on this idea, or I'm envisioning the leg being woven in this circular weaving machine, but then the leg has to somehow become attached.
Totally. So yes, it is tricky. The weaving machines we have, they don't do finishing steps. They don't do pockets. They don't do waistbands. It literally weaves the tube of textile. So there are finishing steps that happen after the big yardage tube of textiles come off of the machine. We are currently doing that in-house now. We've done small-scale production runs for a brand called Eckhouse Laka, and then a brand called Anna Cross. So all of that production is done in-house with the waistband.
So my leg would come all the way up to here, and I have another leg coming all the way up to here.
We have a special way we've manipulated our top block for our pattern with special darts that it's like a whole new way to do pattern making, because we're having to pattern and think ahead of time for a already 3D piece of fabric. So it's been quite tricky, and our production manager, who's like a master pattern maker, has led us through all of this. And then we're working with different like factory partners now that can do finishing steps and waistbands, pockets. We've been chatting with someone that does like laser cutting, so potentially having different pieces for our items laser cut, but yeah, that's all in the works. Nothing's
Thank you. Wow. Greg, can you share more insight into Ware's performance reporting practices for companies that use the product and how it assists them in meeting their sustainable goals?
I have no idea.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I would love to tell you that. Companies, as the prior panel said, in sustainability don't really track their own sustainability metrics because they're really hard to even define. And so then us as a vendor for that is really challenging. So where we sit into that is that we help to increase conversions and reduce returns, right? So we're going to help customers that go to some e-commerce engine or some e-commerce site to buy a shirt or pants or whatever. They're going to size sample less. They're going to return less based on our solutions. And every single product they look at, they're going to know exactly what size to buy without having to do any work once they use our solution. Right? Even if it's different. Right? So for example, like, I don't know, 33, 32 in my jeans and then a large in my top. And we know that, right? So you only have to go through everything one time. We'll tell you your size in every single product on the site. So that type of performance we know. Probably the biggest case study we did was with Ministry of Supply. We did a 6-month A/B test case study with them. They found that their conversion rate when we were available on the site was increased by 27.9%. and the returns were reduced by 19.1%. And that was an A/B test of when where is available versus when it is not available. Right? So in that sense, that's probably the truest test. The other side of that is that anything in e-commerce, like if you click a button, you're inherently biased. So the moment you click the button that says find my size, you're going to convert it like 10 times higher than if you did. Right? So I could say that data, but it's really biased. So there's that. In terms of sustainability, again, helps returns, reduces size sampling, the shipping and CO2 emissions are big. I don't know how to track that, again, because they've been really struggling. I know that there's
software. You need centric software.
kind of, yeah. And there's companies like Loop Returns, right? And there's companies like Redo, and they're trying to track that stuff, and then they're trying to like feed that into the ERP systems and the PLM systems. They're trying to take that into lifecycle management. So what's the size run rate that they should buy? What's the inventory they should buy? Different products, the different guys. And they're like, it's a really complicated one. And I think that when you talk to most of the directors/VPs of sustainability, if they have one at these bigger brands, 90% of their job is figuring out what problem they're going to solve. And they may be asking themselves that question for over 5 years, right? Like that's how challenging this is. And so we sit up here and there's a lot of ideas. There are really smart people working on this, and they don't even know where to start. So it is a big challenge. It's going to take a lot of mind share to kind of like lean into it and figure it out.
Because returns is such a big factor with all of this. In terms of sustainability, what we're speaking about, I don't know if anybody remembers J. Peterman or the J. Peterman catalog. It was a tall, thin catalog. Everything for the first, I don't know, maybe 10 years of existence, you bought from the catalog. And then they opened retail stores. The catalog was not pictures on models. The catalog was sketches. So they were after the idea that creating an emotion for you to buy because you wanted to, it was an emotional picture, and they grabbed people in. They had a return rate of about 70% because you never really saw the fabric, you never really saw it on a person. But then to combat that program, that problem they had, they opened some retail stores. One of the retail stores was right here on Market Street. And what happens is when you're used to seeing a garment drawn, and then you go into the store and you see about 20 of them on a rack, so the retail stores put them out of business because it wasn't not just the sizing, but also this idea of what it's going to look like on me. I don't look like that sketch. So, sizing. Yeah.
You know what's the funny part about that sort for me? Is that size table that they used in that is the same size table that you still see on those sites. That still crosses the cost of the 50% return rate, right?
That's right.
So the evolution in this stuff is just crazy. That's the challenge.
So the idea is if it doesn't fit you, don't throw it out, upcycle it. Make it into something else. And the easy one on that I continually say to people, particularly with students when I was teaching, was you don't want the pants anymore, the pants have shrunk too much, make them into a pair of shorts. Oh, okay. All right. We're going to move along now. I'm going to ask each of you to share an example of what or who you are working on now that highlights the uniqueness of your company's sustainable mission.
Well, right now we are working with DOE. They actually gave us
DOE,
the Department of Energy, who is trying to actually support companies that are decarbonizing industries and bring industries to U.S. So we are working with some national labs on helping us to actually optimize our processes so we can be ready for scale up. I'm also talking to a bunch of brands. As you may imagine, we are online, and so I get emails from companies like Levi's, Burberry, all kinds of companies, and they pretty much just want what we have. They want it now, and they want a lot of it right now, and I'm so sorry I couldn't give it to them. So we are trying to move as fast as we can. Because if you're following fashion and you know that many companies are actually committing to net zero by 2025. Heck, that's next year, 2030. So if you actually are watching the news, many of the companies are actually taking their goals down because they just can't meet them. They have no way of doing it. And so we are trying to contribute to just a little part of it because textile, the fibers are probably about more than 50% of the pollution that comes from the industry. So that's, yeah.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. I was edited quite a lot with what I could share for this part of the question. We are currently working with Walmart on a long-term project. We are developing chinos as a first pilot product with Walmart.
Chinos.
Chinos like a khaki pant. Both. Yeah, both. Which khakis are like my despised thing because I think of private school uniform and having to wear khakis. But anyhow, we will produce other products for Walmart, but nothing that I can discuss. Currently, the vision for the partnership with Walmart is so we can bring jobs back to the U.S. Centered around weaving and to unlock production at scale, as what Greg was asking. And then, other collaborations I really cannot mention. We do have a really exciting announcement that's going to come up for our next big partnership that will be released in about a week and a half.
So we'll all reconvene here.
Right.
We're going to send us all email.
And we're going to come toward the factory also.
Yeah, that's cool. I think for us, we always like in continuous innovation, right? So we listen to customers, listen to users, it's kind of what they want to see next, and then we'll drive down that all of it makes sense. But where we are, we work with several hundred brands, but there's tens of thousands of brands that could use services like us that then does help to make a dent into the environmental impact of e-commerce. And so where we are right now is a big drive towards being able to tell the story for a more wide mouthpiece such that more people will buy our stuff, right? And then we can spend more on marketing. So that's probably the highest one, is really just building up sales and marketing to get more of it out there. And then the other part of it is that we've had this long vision of being able to not only recommend the size of a product, but also like which product is the most likely for you. And so, for example, like if you think about when you go to Macy's.com or your little D2C e-commerce site, whatever it may be, and I'm gonna buy something, right? I don't know when I go to that site what I'm really looking at. And right now these catalogs are so big, right? And so you just end up doom scrolling until something catches your eye. Who knows what that is? So at the end of the day, there's some partners that we're working with to really think about like what type of quiz can we ask this consumer going in based on the information we already know about them, as well as their body shape and size and fit. And then can we get to sort of a curated catalog for them that, based on what this brand has to offer, that is going to be much more catered to them loving this garment and then keeping it because we know that it fits them and that it all over the characteristics of the shop. So that's something that we're working on pretty heavily, and we'll probably have that out to Don't tell anyone.
Great, thank you. SB 707, the legislation that I was talking about earlier, in terms of everything that we've been talking about tonight, the idea is this term fashion that I wanted to bring up, because some people, when they hear the word fashion, they close down and say, I'm not like that. The term fashion is defined as something that comes in and out of a consuming public. So when SB 707 was coming through, fashion was one of the terms that initially was in one of the many documents that was amended, let's say. So it was a term that was in there that then came out. And the term now, it talks about clothing and textiles, with the idea that textiles is also, could be, not the cement up there, but it's the pillows, it's the cushions, it's the rugs, so there are other textiles the textiles are not just used for clothing. But there was much conversation, as I had said before, about upcycling, but also this term fashion. And is that bringing people in or turning people off also. So I don't know if anybody has experienced that with the work that they're doing.
I just saw a statistic yesterday that there, as far as fibers, there are 120 million tons of fibers produced last year, and about 60% of that goes into fashion, clothing. So there's still quite a bit that goes into all kinds of other things.
Right. Correct. I think it's the term. It's the term fashion clothing. And with that, one of the other technological advances are tools that you can, as I was saying before, that the labels, we cut those out because they're scratching them. So if I want to know what's in my pants, there are tools that are now not these huge, vast ones, but that can scan a garment and say what the fiber content is of that. And the reason why you need to know what the fiber content is to know if it can be recycled, or if it has a mix of fibers, so it has to be mechanically, or how it needs to be recycled, or if there's something else that you also should be doing this, that it's not worth, the value of the product itself is not worth the time, the energy, the cost that someone had talked about in more pollution that you're doing, and I think it was on the first panel from recycling and what that does. So.
I have probably a horrible contrarian point here, but I think it kind of comes down to overconsumption, right? Like, we all overconsume like crazy. And at the end of the day, the businesses are trying to keep up with our overconsumption. And so, again, like, this is why I think this conversation is generally quite circular, is because it takes behavioral changes from all of us to then change the business landscape and then focus on more recycled or more zero waste production, or better, better materials. And so in that sense, but like our overconsumption ends up driving the macroeconomic conditions that then drive the businesses to overproduce, which then drives the lack of sustainability. So I always like, whenever I do these types of conversations, I think it's really important to not just blame the businesses, right? The businesses are keeping up with us. And so a lot of times I think we need to turn internally to think about these types of things before just pointing finger. So anyway, I always like to end with that. You guys can try and cut me later. Sorry.
Am I on here? Yeah. In terms of that overconsumption and the models that we have, I remember when my kids were little and we were buying clothing, and I would say, you have to look at the label and you have to see where it's made. And I can remember one of them could have been Uzbekistan, and having my 7-year-old son trying to pronounce that, and then me saying, well, where in the world is that? And I say to them, well, why would you buy something if you don't know where it is? You don't know. So, I mean, just different ways or different methodologies of people trying to get people to think about what it is that we're wearing. And, as you were saying, I do believe the social psychology of our clothing. How many people, if you think about what's in your closet, what's on the floor, what's in your drawer, wherever you keep your clothing, that you haven't worn in a year or 2 or 3. But it was given it to you, and it has a value to you. It has a meaning for you. So you're keeping it. Any other comments that you would anybody like to make or thought of?
Question up for Q&A.
Well, then we would like to have the first panel come up also.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I can take whoever wants to ask questions. Okay, so we're opening up for Q&A and wanted to see if you have some questions for our lovely panelists here. Who would like to go first? I'll still volunteer you.
Hi, it's a great panel. Thank you, everyone. You mentioned the new California legislation and I keep hearing bits and pieces. Can you just explain briefly what is the name is and how it should work? And also, how is now California going to be embedded with other states in the US?
California would like to be embedded with other states. California would like it to be a national and not just a California. New York tried this, but the legislation did not pass it in New York. Just recently. California, it has passed. It's basically extended producer responsibility, which means if you are a company that is producing and selling within California $1 million or over $1 million, and I don't know if they're of goods, that you are responsible for taking that back. You're responsible for the entire circular lifestyle of that garment. And there will be a cost that each of us will be paying. Right now, there are 2 EPR bills, if you will, in California. One is mattresses and one is carpet. When you buy a mattress, you pay a fee after you buy it that the mattress company is supposed to be giving to whoever is monitoring that program for the end-up recycling of that mattress, the same with carpet. What has been learned from that is that the cost should be embedded in the product itself, and there will be a PRO,
Producer Responsibility Organization.
Thank you, Producer Responsibility Organization, that is going to work to monitor how we are going to, what's going to be recycled, what's going to be repaired, and we also as customers will be able to bring goods into a place. So it's no longer going to be someone like, it was said earlier, a Goodwill or a Salvation Army or other nonprofits that we're dumping our goods at. That won't be happening anymore. It's very challenging. It's very challenging, and it's a very long bill. I mean, it's like a 32-page piece of legislation. So if you go online and put in SB 707, you will find that probably, since it just passed Sunday, this just passed, there are many little articles that are out there now from Sourcing Journal and other consumer journals that have many links that could answer some questions. Did that help a little?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our next question.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for hosting this. Because G and I are co-founder of a company. We're working on something to trying to influence the shoppers' behavior to some degree. Sometimes we feel very lonely by doing this because it's a very hard job to do. And being with you guys, I feel like we feel empowered. It's like we're not alone doing this. So thank you so much. I have a question for Via from different kind of angles. Like, what's the hardest part? What do we feel the hardest part about the shopping behaviors? People just like to buy more. And what do we want to encourage people to do is building digital wardrobe, doing this, doing that. But we don't find that to be attractive enough so that people don't form a habit of doing certain things actually are changing their day-to-day kind of the way they look at their closet, the way they go to shops. So any tips from any of you in terms of what's the best way to impacting shopping behavior? What you guys have seen works.
I think as a consumer and also as someone who works in the fashion industry or adjacent, I really think the digital product passport is going to be something that's very helpful for consumers. So a digital product passport is something that they're already doing in France. That's essentially saying the impact of a product, the main materials in the product, where it was made. I think they go back to where the main material came from as well. So not just where the garment was cut and sewn, but where the main material came from as well. But I think there there's so much distance between what the consumer, like, what is that? Not objective reality, just bear with me here. But what I'm saying is that it's very easy to dissociate from the origin of the product. If I buy a $5 top from Shein, well, the worker who made the top is going to probably get 1/5 of whatever that top costs. So do I, as a consumer, want to buy something where I know the person who made it got paid $1? No. But if I don't think of it like that, it's cognitive dissonance was the word. Cognitive dissonance. So if I don't think about it and I don't have to think about it, then I won't think about it. But if it's on a label, then I think about it more what I'm buying. It's like ingredients on like the side of a cereal box or whatever too. There's like, you're like, that's way too much sugar. So I think having that digital product passport is going to change things. But the reality is it's very hard for brands to even pull that data to make it consumer facing and to be able to back it up as well. So I think that's, in my opinion, what would help.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In which ways? Like trying to impact consumer behavior can mean a lot of different things. Like in which kind of give us a silo or
I can tell you which way works, like I see works, marketing way. Generating some sort of pride of wearing something upcycled, generating something sort of pride about I keep stuff for long. Such as right now, there's kind of trend about quiet luxury. Like there are trend about slow fashion. These kind of things marketing works. Anything works, but it doesn't last. That's the problem, right? So it's like beyond marketing, what else like can work? I think your idea works is that if I'm like trying to see which size fits me better, I predict you're going to return this or you're going to keep it. It saves like one shipping box from one destination to the other. That works too. So any other like ways of just from consumer psychology, which is what she mentioned, like can shape a better shopping behavior in general. That's my question.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And my initial reaction to what you asked was going to be marketing. Like it was to think through like, how do you generally find a new brand to buy from? You're probably scrolling on some social media site and that pops up and like, oh, super cool. And you click on it, right? But I think like the trends of things like slow fashion or more sustainable fashion, one of the biggest challenges that those brands face is that you have to constantly acquire new customers.
That's right.
Because you're not selling this t-shirt 17 different times over the course of the next year because it's going to fall apart, right? And that is why fast fashion brands have increased in valuation so much, is because the business model is far more catered towards the public markets, which is where the investable dollars lie, right? And so I think like in this sense, this is where we have to kind of think differently about how do we create slow fashion that is sustainable from a go-to-market strategy, from a business strategy, in a different way than it is now, because now it's not. And that's a hard problem to solve, right? But it's also sort of one of those critical points of what gets us towards a more sustainable fashion for the future. Go ahead.
Sorry, we had a little bit of swap. I'm CTO of Upcycler, filling in for Gia. She had to leave. I think there's some piece that you hit on there that we're trying to build into our platform is that idea of community, right? If you understand there are other people like you who are also engaging in this platform, right? It drives that type of shopping behavior and being able to talk about the story of your pieces, right? And that's something that you're able to do in a social environment. So building more of that engagement, I think, is something that we're really trying to focus on as well, is really getting the consumer closer to the piece, kind of something how you mentioned, like you buy a $5 shirt, who actually created that? How does it impact their life when you're buying that shirt, right? So by having these pieces on Upcyclers and being able to create content around it and create a story around it, you're able to tell consumers, where was this piece created from? Why did you create it? Was it your grandma's drapery that you took down and created this piece, right? And I think that's how you build more of a movement, because you can create more and more of that community and more like-minded people around that.
We have one more response to your question.
I'm glad.
Kind of piggybacking off of what other folks have said. I don't know if anyone's heard of Remake, but this is like jogging my mind with Remake. So I'm an ambassador for Remake along with some of my friends that are here in the room. But Remake is a advocacy, education, and nonprofit that fights for garment workers' fair pay. And I think one thing that we focus on at Remake is like really the education piece of it. And like frankly, people have lost touch with how things are made. They don't know how long it takes to sew a blazer. It takes 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours. That's even a low number, honestly, to make a blazer. So I think it's really just bringing people back to the idea of slow fashion, how something's made, and like kind of the labor of love and like the beauty behind the creation process, and that it is like very labor intensive, this industry that honestly is exploiting people off of such cheap labor. It's just really a shame. But yeah, Remake, I would look into it if you guys aren't aware. Yeah, exactly how it sounds, Remake.
Aisha,
But it-
Yeah.
It also brings us together in a community, a global community.
Totally.
Anyone can be an ambassador, and we have a local chapter, Bay Area chapter, where we get together. And also as a community, there's like buy no new clothes, challenges. And then we get together and we watch films, or we do clothing swaps, or we do upcycling. So it's really about this community uprising, right?
Totally. And there was a campaign that Remake did when I very first heard of Remake, and it was Who Made My Clothes? And it was showcasing garment workers holding up signs saying like, I made your clothes, this woman in India or this woman in Bangladesh. So yeah, Remake's a super, super powerful organization, and I always try to plug it wherever I can.
Thank you so much.
We have time for one more?
We don't actually. Yeah, so but we'll have to wrap up because we promised to wrap up around 8:30, which is 5 minutes from now. So
They can catch people individually.
yes. If you have been following our social media, which is Fashion Community Week, we have been really stalking each speakers and tagging them, so you will find them. So just go online today, and you're going to see we've been tagging them as we're making stories. So you can find everyone up on it.
And I just wanted to thank you, Shirin, for putting us on. Clearly, it was very.
And I wanted to, thank you, Dad. I'm loud. We still have some food and drinks, so please help yourselves. And then if you see, there are some papers with QR code. If you look at it, that's going to give you programs for the next 2 days of the events. So please be welcome to check it out, and we'll see you this week, yeah? Thank you very much.
Yes.